Hi, Rachel. Good to see you. So what do we know so far?
Hey, Renee. Yes, so Rideau Hall has just confirmed that Mark Carney and his new cabinet are going to be sworn in on Tuesday at Rideau Hall. That ceremony is set to take place at 10:30 a.m. As for what we know beyond that, Renee, frankly, little. Right now, there's a ton of speculation in this city about what Carney's new cabinet is going to look like, whether it's going to be larger than the one he selected just before the election. We do know, though, from his press conference this time last week, that he is committed to upholding gender parity, for example, and promising a more efficient cabinet. So we'll see what that means.
Now, this is a very big deal because of all the talks with Donald Trump and the tariffs, isn't it, Rachel?
Absolutely. So one of the big questions, Renee, is whether Mark Carney is going to choose to keep that core group that he brought to D.C. earlier this week to meet with Donald Trump and his officials in their current posts. These are folks like Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, International Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who have been hard at work on these files over the course of the campaign and the lead up to it, and whether or not Mark Carney wants to keep those people in those positions to keep building on the relationships they have built, or if he is looking to kind of set a new and start a refresh. There's also some questions around some of the high-profile recruits that Mark Carney was able to get to run for the Liberals in the last election who won their seats, and whether they could be put into this cabinet and what kind of trickle-down effect that would have on some of the other positions.
Now, you mentioned earlier the Prime Minister has vowed to have gender parity, much like his predecessor, Justin Trudeau. Can he succeed?
It is definitely possible, and gender parity is one of those considerations that Carney will have to make in addition to regional representation. And frankly, the results of the election have made that a bit easier for Carney to do numbers-wise than it was for Trudeau, because now the Liberals have more Liberal MPs across the country. Specifically, I'm thinking about some of the gains they made in Western Canada and in the prairies, being able to have a few people to choose from to bring into cabinet to represent those regions of the country. Gender parity also something he will be able to uphold based on the breakdown of MPs that they have elected, of course. There are some high-profile names. Natalie Provost comes to mind as one, Caroline DeRoche. These are new Liberal elected MPs that could find a way into cabinet. They are high-profile folks that Carney spent time with on the campaign trail. It's really a question, Renee, of growing the cabinet versus putting people in certain positions, whether we're going to see Carney keep what he did in his pre-election wartime cabinet as it was kind of discussed, and have people holding on to multiple portfolios, if he's going to like spread the wealth, so to speak. And that'll also be an interesting area to see where he contrasts with Justin Trudeau, who at the end of his tenure had an arguably quite bloated cabinet, giving a number of positions to a number of people, seeing the numbers quite big in terms of who's on his front bench. And we'll see soon, Tuesday, if Mark Carney takes a similar approach or if he's going to try to keep things more streamlined.
Now, one to watch, Rachel, could be Chrystia Freeland. She was Justin Trudeau's deputy prime minister, and Donald Trump mentioned her in passing in his Oval Office comments the other day. Do we think she will still play a key role?
That is an excellent question, and I know one that a lot of folks are wondering. I do think what is worth noting here is in the last shuffle, Freeland was put in as internal trade minister. So she isn't expected to be one of the key players in any sort of interactions with Donald Trump going forward. And she's been given a pretty big order, Renee. Mark Carney has promised to essentially do away with interprovincial trade barriers by Canada Day, making a one economy instead of 13. So to change up the internal trade minister at this moment might be a challenging choice given that pressing deadline. So potentially because she has had those marching orders, that could see her stay in that position. But it's one of those big questions of how many of the faces from Trudeau's cabinet are going to stay in versus how much Mark Carney wants to signal to Canadians a total refresh and get kind of a new guard in there. And that's going to be one of the big things we'll watch play out next week.
All right, thank you for your insights, Rachel. That is CTV's Rachel Aiello in Ottawa. Again, Mark Carney announcing his cabinet on Tuesday at 10:30 Eastern at Rideau Hall.